For this Bundt cake, you're going to need dark cocoa, all-purpose flour, sugar, eggs, bittersweet chocolate, Guinness beer, Guinness stout, or your favorite dark stout beer, whatever brand that is. Salt, and I use kosher salt, not table salt. If you're using table salt, use slightly less. Baking soda, cinnamon. I really like cinnamon with chocolate, but if you don't, feel free to leave it out. Vanilla, buttermilk, and heavy cream and butter, if I didn't say that. This is 1 cup. It's basically 2 sticks, but the butter that I get comes in 1 big chunk. And I've let it come to room temperature, so it's a little melty. You want your eggs to be at room temperature too. And that is basically all you need for this. Okay, we're gonna add the room temperature butter to the mixer. And that might be a little warmer than room temperature, but that's okay. It's warm room temperature. You want it, when your ingredients are at room temperature, they just mix better. You get a better rise out of the cake or quick bread or whatever you're making. They blend better. It's just better overall. So try to make sure that they're at room temperature. Then we're going to turn the mixer on and add sugar until it's dissolved and the butter is light and fluffy. This is creaming butter and sugar, and most people don't do it long enough. It can take up to 5 minutes to get it really good and creamed. Every once in a while you want to stop and scrape down the sides and scrape the bottom and make sure all of it is getting mixed. Okay, now we've got that creamed and the sugar is pretty dissolved. Not all the way. You can still feel the grains a little bit, but they're mostly gone. And that's fine. You just want it as much as possible. We're going to add the eggs one at a time while we're beating on low to low medium speed. Okay, and then scrape down the sides, always. And now I'm going to add the other egg. I've melted 4 ounces of the chocolate. The other 4 ounces is for the glaze, but I've melted 4 ounces of the chocolate and I've let it cool down. We don't want it to be super hot. You always want to melt chocolate at a super low heat and just take it out and stir it often because chocolate will burn very quickly. So we're going to add the vanilla and the melted chocolate. And then we're going to scrape down the sides, of course, because we want to get all of that mixed in together really well. We don't want any streaks of butter. We don't want any streaks of chocolate. We want it all to be mixed up just right. This is kind of hard to do when you're doing it backwards. It's so much easier to make when you're not making a video at the same time. Okay, that looks like it's mixed pretty well. So we're going to set this aside for just a minute. And I've given up on y'all not hearing my dogs bark. There's just no way around it. You're going to hear them bark. There's always something going on at the house. Always somebody coming or going, and it's crazy. All right, so we're going to take our cocoa and flour and add the cinnamon, the baking soda, and the salt. There's not really a lot of salt in this. You may want to add more salt if you use unsalted butter. I happen to be using salted butter, so I'm not adding very much salt at all. Then we want to mix this up so that it's completely mixed. Probably would have been good to start with a bigger bowl, but you know. And if you happen to see any like lumps of cocoa that haven't broken up, a lot of times I'll sift the cocoa because it tends to get moisture in it and lumps up in hard little pieces. And those are not fun to bite into. And sometimes I forget. So if I happen to see them when I'm doing this, I'll just make sure that they get broken up. Okay. That's nice and mixed up. We're going to set that aside. And I measured the, this is clean. I measured the buttermilk in it. I just wanted to put the buttermilk in a smaller bowl for the first shot when we were talking about ingredients. So I'm going to put the buttermilk back in there. And to that, I'm going to add 3/4 a cup of the Guinness. And of course, I can't find my 3/4 of a cup measure, so I'm going to use 3/4 cup measures. 1. When you're pouring this, you want to pour it on the side and pour it really slow because you don't want it to develop a head on it. That will throw your measurement off. And that is also room temperature, by the way. Now, don't start drinking that yet because we're going to use a little bit more of it in the glaze. But for right now, you're not going to need any more. All right, we're going to bring the mixer back over. We're going to add the flour and cocoa mixture in 3 batches. We're going to start with the flour mixture. Then we're going to add half of the Guinness and buttermilk mixture. Then another third, and then the rest of this, and then another third. And you want to do this on low speed because if you don't, it's going to fly all over your kitchen, all over your face, all over everything. Not that I've ever done that before, but you know. And again, you want to stop every once in a while and scrape down the sides. Okay, looks like we're done with that. I'm going to take the bowl off of the mixer and I'll be right back. Okay, our cake batter is all ready to go. You can see how rich and chocolatey it is. It's pretty thick. You can turn it over and it doesn't come off the spatula, the rubber spatula. And so that's just about perfect. So we're going to set that aside. The oven has been being preheated to 325. I'm going to spray the inside of my Bundt pan with nonstick spray because the spray gets into all of the little patterns better than anything else. Now, we're going to dust it, but I always, if it's a chocolate cake, I prefer to dust it with cocoa powder. That way you don't have white streaks on the outside of your cake. So I'm going to put a little cocoa powder in there, maybe a tablespoon or 2. And I'm going to move it around just like I would for if it was flour. Okay, the inside is all covered with cocoa, and now it's ready for us to put our batter in. One thing that you want to make sure you do is to tap the pan and dump out as much extra cocoa as you can, just like you would with flour. All right, and we're going to This is a very thick batter, so we're just going to kind of spoon it in. I'm hoping that this is the right size pan. Most of my recipes are from the 80s and 90s when I was learning to cook and I was a new wife and a new mom. And I've noticed that pans have changed sizes since then. So when my recipe calls for a Bundt pan, there was just one size back then, but since then there are all kinds of different sizes. So this is a Nordic ware, and I love it. I love the pattern on it, but we'll see. I think this is going to be okay. If you're putting your batter in a Bundt pan and it looks like it's filling it up too much, then just don't put all the batter in, okay? Make sure that you leave it room to expand. Make cupcakes or some other small cake with the remaining batter. But I think we're good here. All right. And then you want to make sure, just drop it on the counter a couple of times and make sure that the batter gets down into the designs on your Bundt pan. I also like to run a knife through there just to make sure that we've got it all down in there and there are no bubbles or anything like that. All right. Get it in there as smooth as possible, all the way to the edges. So you'll be able to tell that it's done when instant read thermometer that's stuck halfway between the center and the side, so right about there, comes out and it'll read 200 degrees. Or if you stick a long toothpick in, it'll come out with just maybe a couple of moist crumbs sticking to it. It's going to take about 40 to 50 minutes at 325, and I'll see you back here then. Well, the Bundt cake came out of the oven, and look how beautiful dark chocolate that is. That's from that Hershey's Extra Dark Cocoa, and then dust in the pan with the dark cocoa. You get this really nice dark chocolate color. What I'm going to do next is make the ganache glaze, and the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to put my heavy cream into a microwave safe container, and I'm going to heat that up until bubbles just start around the edges. So I'll be right back. While that's heating up, I'm going to measure out 2 tablespoons of my Guinness. The cream is hot, and what I'm going to do is put in my chocolate chips, and then I'm just going to stir those until they're all melted. You want to make sure that no water gets into the chocolate, and doing it this way ensures that the chocolate melts into the cream and gives you a nice smooth ganache. And you can see that as those chocolate chips melt, and it just gets thick, nice and thick. Okay, we want to make sure that there's no small lumps of chocolate left in there either. Now we're going to take the Guinness and heat it up in the microwave just till it's warm, because we don't want to put it in there cold. And then we're just going to mix that right in to the ganache until it's smooth. I didn't feel like the ganache was thick enough, and so I've added a couple of more ounces of chocolate chips, and I'm just going to stir those in there until they melt. It's nice and warm. It shouldn't take very long. You can always do that, because sometimes things seem like they thicken up and sometimes they seem like they don't thicken up as much. So if you feel like something needs to be thicker, like with this ganache, just add a little bit more chocolate. it's your recipe, you know, don't follow it blindly, right? If you see that something's not working, go ahead and adjust it as you may need to. We have a nice smooth ganache now, and it's nice and thick and rich. You want the ganache to coat the back of the spoon so that you can leave a streak in it just like that. All right, I don't want to make a huge mess, so I'm going to lift the cake up just a little bit and put some parchment under there. So that when we glaze it, the cake plate stays pretty clean. And I'm going to put a little bit right on the inside for the same reason. I don't want it to go right in there. And I'll show you how we'll do that in just a minute. So there's the cake. And we're just going to spoon this glaze right over it. It's so rich and so thick. So much chocolate. And we're just letting it drip down the sides. The parchment is going to catch all of the extra drips. Need a little bit more over here. Now I'm going to take the middle part out, and it's going to drip down there a little bit, but nothing like it would have if I was still spooning it over the top. So I'm going to let it sit there and stop dripping for a little bit, and then we'll cut into it and take a look. Well, y'all, I've pulled the parchment paper out. We have a nice clean cake plate. This glaze is absolutely delicious. And now it's time to slice it, see what we've got on the inside. This is a very dense, rich cake. And so you really can get away with smaller slices, I think. Some people might disagree. But look at that. Look, the glaze, the ganache on top is shiny, it's thick and rich. The dark chocolate inside, and it's so moist. It holds together really, really well. And it tastes delicious. Well, y'all, this easy bundt cake is perfect for St. Patrick's Day. I know you're gonna love it. But it's also great any other day of the year. It's delicious, deep, dark chocolate, and it's so dense and moist. It stays delicious for days. So definitely give it a try, okay? The recipe is down below. Just scroll down and you'll find it. There's also a link to the blog with the printable recipe, nutrition information, more tips, anything you could need there. And yeah, this is delicious. I hope you're gonna try it. I hope you'll love it, and I hope you'll come back next week, okay? Love y'all. Bye-bye.